Hello, everyone. It is February 18th, 2017. As promised, I'm doing a video about groupthink. And it doesn't matter whether you're part of my group, transgender people, or you're part of another group. If that group thinks a certain way generally as a whole, and they have a tremendous amount of hatred and intolerance towards people that think differently, then yeah, you're gonna feel the slap of groupthink. It can make you feel incredibly lonely. It can make you even feel hated. Uh, the, the language people use to describe their displeasure in the things that you find of value can be really just so just hateful. And these are bigots. There's no other word for it. They're bigots, and a lot of it has to do with ignorance. Usually, ignorance is and bigotry. They're just they just go hand in hand. They're best friends, and so they're the single easiest group to manipulate for the media because if something's going on that the media doesn't want you to focus on, all they got to do is just rattle your cage about your insecurities and your bigotries, and boom, it just flies right by. I mean, how many people know that there's this huge humanitarian crisis going on in Yemen? I mean, a child is dying starving to death every 10 minutes. A child's starving to death. And I know that's not the same numbers you hear when they talk about, the children starving around the world, but you got a whole world. This is just a little country, So if that, if Yemen were to be repeated over the entire face of the earth, yeah, they'd be dying every few seconds, right? If not every second. And so it's horrible. America is, feeding the weapons and bombs to them. The UK is, feeding the weapons and bombs to the Saudi Arabians as they completely just decimate this population, and their own government is decimating them. There's a lot of civilians, a lot of children that are being absolutely destroyed. There's a lot of really important stories that have happened since Trump's been elected that just so many people know nothing about. And it's easy because, like I said, all they got to do is just when that story comes out, right, or this thing comes out that they don't like, or they shines the government in a negative light, or shines big money in a negative light, all they got to do is just put up a few Trump things, and you're just frothing at the mouth, right? And it works exactly the same way for the right. When all of a sudden they hit us with the whole bathroom thing got all heated up, and they got people running around telling the right that their daughters are just going to have to get used to seeing penises in locker rooms. That's the new norm. When that had nothing to do with anything. That wasn't true at all. And so it took their focus off of what was going on, and what big money and big government and the monopolies didn't want them to focus on. And so you guys are it's so easy to manipulate you. And it's like you see almost an entire generation being manipulated in this way. And it's really downright depressing. And do you have rights to be angry and mad? Sure. But once you start frothing at the mouth and start pouring your hate out, they know they've got you. And so from people within your group that don't agree with your ideas, or have different political ideas, or have different social ideas, or have a different idea about faith and abortion and all these other things, once you get people to stop speaking their voice because you're just such a raging bigot, that you really hurt the group. You just weaken the entire core. So when I posted it up there, I put it as a question. And so I was hoping people would, toss out their experiences or their understanding, or know what it's like to be, on the wrong end of groupthink. And I know exactly what it's like. It sucks. But I'm not going to change my views or my ideas or my faith just because a bunch of bigots can't contain themselves. I mean, that's not going to happen. So, and for some people, they just express themselves. And when you watch the way they do it, right, it's very respectful. But they're, that's the like the quiet minority. They're just, they walk softly with this, with no stick, right? They just, they share their piece or put up different posts or, keep you aware of certain things. And then you got the others that are just so vile. And so that's great when it's all pointing at Trump, right? Go get him, go get him, go get him. But once it gets turned on something that you value, your faith or something important to you, then wow, it can be it's just so jarring. Yeah, a group that's constantly asking for tolerance and inclusion, that's just so incredibly intolerant and that, that absolutely despises inclusion. It's like, "Arr." It's like, come on, boys and girls. Don't let your hate get the best of you. Don't let the media manipulate you, because that's, in the end, that's what they're doing. Let's say Trump tries to do something to go after the monopolies, or let's say Trump tries to do something to actually do something to protect our Fourth Amendment rights. Maybe he tries to shut down them tapping our our phones or whatever. And not that he would, but let's say if he did that, all they got to do is just twist the report in just the right way, and next thing you know, you're screaming against your own Fourth Amendment rights. You're screaming against your own financial freedom. And because it's so easy to manipulate somebody that's just so deep into their hate and their bigotry, then it's tough to watch. It's sad to watch. It's just, I get contacted all the time, and and the girls can't they can't connect to what I'm doing because they'll get the same crap that I do. And I've been unfriended by so many trans girls, you have no idea. Hundreds of trans girls because of speaking out against this. And so my friends list would literally probably be twice as big if I just kept my mouth shut. But why keep your mouth shut in the middle of of this extreme bigotry and this extreme intolerance? And you'll say, well, that's why I'm yelling at Trump, right? And for good reason. I understand. I get it, right? I get it. I watched what he did with the Dakota pipeline there. That broke my heart. And so no, I get it, but it doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop at that river's edge. It pours out into so many different areas. And if you're not part of groupthink, then you're an idiot. You're an enemy. And so this idiot, this enemy, wants you to know there's a lot of girls that think like me, and there's a lot of girls that are completely disconnected and even depressed because of how they just they can't speak their mind without being completely just unfriended, hated, and pummeled by intolerance. And so groupthink, it's ugly, it's undemocratic, un-American. Well, it's very democratic actually, but it flies right in the face of liberty. You know, in a democracy, the larger group always gets to say so, and that's why we're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic. That way, smaller groups are protected by liberty, And once again, Benjamin Franklin said, democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for lunch, and liberty is a well-armed lamb contesting the vote. And you don't need a gun to be well armed. You just need to know your rights, and you need to stand up for your rights to have a voice, the rights to think differently than the herd. Um, it's tough, and if you knew just how much pain you were causing some of the trans girls, I do pretty good, right? I hold on pretty good. I'm tough as nails. And people say, oh, you bring it on yourself by mentioning it. It's like, how could you not mention it? Just like when Trump does something insane. I mean, how do you not mention it, right? But it's when you start pouring your hate and you start telling somebody that they're not part of your group and that they don't belong, or making them feel like they don't belong. That's when I have to use words like bigotry and intolerance and bigot, because bigotry is just so ugly. And my favorite quote out of all the quotes I've come up with is bigotry and racism is what you get when you mix poor character with ignorance. So it isn't just ignorance, it's poor character and ignorance. This is a person that, doesn't value liberty and then turns around and jumps up and down and saying, "I'm fighting for liberty." As long as you agree with me, I'm fighting for your liberty. If you don't agree with me, I'm gonna stomp all over your liberties. So, and the drill. The right's been doing it to the trans community all along. So, and part of the left, not just the right. People have been doing it to the trans community for years, and just stomping on our liberties. And so it's so confusing being inside this group being stomped on from all directions, and then watching them stomping on each other. It's just, wow. It's embarrassing. I mean, you might want to rethink that. How about some tolerance? How about some inclusiveness? Stop just saying the words. Why don't you try living them? Because you really are hurting a lot of girls. There's a lot of girls that don't agree with you, that don't even agree with groupthink, that just either don't have a voice or refuse to speak up, which is like the single worst kind of intolerance. When you can get somebody to stop speaking their mind, that's the worst kind of intolerance. Snuffing out somebody's voice. I mean, that's horrific. And to run around crying about intolerance when you're frothing at the mouth intolerant. It's like I said, it's quite jarring to watch. So anyways, groupthink, it's a horrible thing. It's the same reason why trans people are having such a rough time. Groupthink just works so badly against us, and from inside and without. All right, go ahead and hate me, unfriend me, and do all the mean things that everybody else does to me. And if you're one of the girls hearing this that are like, wow, I'm glad somebody said it. This is for you. This is for you. Okay. I love you, and bye.